This video is for commentary purposes only. Hit that subscribe button and enjoy this crazy story. If you're interested in this particularly read, be sure to purchase it on Audible.
Butterfly in the sky,
I can go twice as high.
take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere, friends to know and ways to grow, a reading rainbow. I can be anything. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow, reading rainbow, reading rainbow, reading rainbow.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Reading Rainbow. Tonight's book we are going to be reading is going to be The Gangsters of Harlem, which you can go ahead and purchase it on Audible. It's a really good book, man. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's Charles of World and the Reading Rainbow adult version.
Harlem's original gangster. Dutch Schultz ruled the Harlem Numbers for almost 5 years, but his death did not end the white mob's dominance of the racket. After Lucky Luciano forced Ciro Terranova to retire, control passed to the Genovese crime family. The Genoveses were one of the 5 major families comprising the National Commission, formed after the murders of godfathers Joe Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano in 1931. The Commission still rules the Italian-American mob today. The Genoveses gave Mike Triggerman Coppola the job of overseeing the Harlem rackets. Coppola was suspected of being involved in the 1928 robbery at the Tippecanoe Democratic Club that many believed Terranova masterminded. Coppola, whose nickname came from his reputation for being quick to kill, grew up in East Harlem and had served 5 jail terms before his 25th birthday. As Harlem's numbers boss, Coppola had the responsibility for keeping local politicians under control. When the mobster learned that Joseph Scatarigio, the Republican leader in Harlem, planned to support a candidate who would oppose mob favorite Vito Marcantonio, he moved to keep Scatarigio in line. When the stubborn Republican leader refused to toe the line, Coppola had to teach him a lesson. On election day, Coppola and 3 henchmen brutally beat Scatarigio, who died 6 days later. The authorities believed Coppola's pregnant wife Doris had information that could help convict her husband of Scatarigio's murder. Before Doris could tell authorities what she knew, however, she died on February 17, 1948, after giving birth to a daughter. Triggerman Mike had Doris cremated before an autopsy could be done. Later, Coppola's second wife claimed she had proof that Doris was murdered, although she did not provide details. Coppola retired to Florida in the 1940s and left his lieutenant, Fat Tony Salerno, in charge of the numbers racket. Coppola was convicted of income tax evasion in 1962 and spent a year in jail. 4 years later, he died in a Boston hospital. Born in 1911 in East Harlem, Salerno started out his life of crime as a street gang member before moving on to the loan sharking and protection rackets as a member of La Cosa Nostra. Following the death of Frank Thierry in 1981, Fat Tony became the head of the Genovese crime family, although an informant later claimed that Vincente the Chin Gigante was the actual head. In 1985, Salerno received a 100-year jail sentence. 7 years later, Fat Tony died of a stroke in prison. The powerful presence of La Cosa Nostra in Harlem extended into the 1960s, but questions remain as to what role black gangsters played in Harlem during this period. People living in Harlem in the 1930s and 40s talked about the emergence in the late 1930s of the 40 Thieves, a tough gang that operated around 140th Street and Lenox Avenue. Stephanie St. Clair, the one-time numbers queen, was reputed to be a gang leader. The 40 Thieves started out as an extortion ring, and by 1940 had extended its reach to the numbers game. Eventually, it was involved with cocaine trafficking and distribution via a criminal network that reached beyond Harlem. The gang was able to build a mystique that some mob historians say distorted the picture of its true role in Harlem organized crime and its relation to the Italian mob. The 40 Thieves, according to local lore, took on the Italian mob and refused to make payoffs. As the legend goes, the Genovese crime family backed off because it did not want to go to war with such a tough crew. Mob historians point out that during the period from the 1930s to the 1960s, the Italian-American mafia was too powerful and politically well-connected for the 40 Thieves to challenge. Still, the gang could role-play to its advantage. As Sifakis explains, most likely, the 40 Thieves paid like other blacks, but found their posture of supposed deadly independence very valuable in selling their extortion shakedowns. After all, there was not much hope for a small businessman standing up to black racketeers who supposedly took the measure of the mafia. Whether legend or actual history, the story of the 40 Thieves standing up to the white mob has persisted. In fact, it has been the subject of writings and movies. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, the true-life Harlem gangster who operated from the 1920s to the 1960s, was reputed to be a member of the 40 Thieves. In the movie Hoodlums, Johnson appears as a central character, the bodyguard of Stephanie St. Clair, who protected her against Dutch Schultz. But as we have seen, the strong-willed Queenie received little help in her battle royale against the powerful Dutch Schultz. It's true that she did have a relationship with Bumpy, although at the time she was in her 40s and he in his 20s. According to one historical account, the age difference only added a blend of freshness with seasoning to the quiet sexual stew that simmered between them. Madame St. Clair took it upon herself to polish the rough edges. She was surprised and delighted to find him, Bumpy Johnson, very intelligent and well-read. Johnson, whose character in Hoodlum was played by Lawrence Fishburne, had many running gun battles with his arch-enemy, Bub Hewlett, a black gangster who worked as Schultz's enforcer in the Harlem community. In melodramatic prose, Helen Lawrenson, Johnson's mistress, and a longtime managing editor at Vanity Fair magazine, describes what allegedly happened. With fabulous personal courage, he shot it out in dark alleyways with Bub Hewlett's gang, in the sinister dimness of streets off Lenox Avenue, against great odds, when the battle cry of the opposition was, "Get Bumpy." Whatever Johnson's true role in the battle over the numbers rackets, there is no denying he was a major gangster who made a big imprint on Harlem's criminal turf. Several monikers, Black Outlaw, Robin Hood of Harlem, and Black Nationalist, among others, are used to describe this complicated and fascinating gangster. Lou Rice, former special agent in charge, DEA New York Division, said Johnson's reputation as a powerful and influential gangster was well known in the DEA. Johnson was the first original gangster of Harlem, and he had a hand in everything from extortion to narcotics to the gambling rackets, Rice recalled. According to Evelyn Cunningham, her husband, Chink Cunningham, a major policy banker who worked for Dutch Schultz and the Genovese crime family, knew Johnson well. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just into numbers, she recalled. He was into drugs and pimping too. Now that's very different from just being a numbers banker. When my husband introduced me to Bumpy, he said, "I am going to introduce you to a real gangster." Frank Lucas, a major heroin dealer of the 1970s, worked for Bumpy as a bodyguard when he arrived in Harlem. He noted, "If you want to do business in Harlem, you did it with Bumpy Johnson, or you were dead." He recalled how he would accompany his boss twice a week for lunch at a 57th Street restaurant with mobster Frank Costello. Costello grew up in East Harlem after immigrating to America with his mother and brother in 1895. A close associate of Lucky Luciano, he played a role in Italian-American organized crime similar to Bumpy Johnson's. He was an important intermediary between the mob and the political establishment. Costello was well connected politically. This was evident in 1932 when he roomed with Jimmy Hines, the corrupt Democratic politician who was on Dutch Schultz's payroll at the Democratic National Convention. 4 years later, Costello was sent to Dannemora prison, where he might have met Bumpy. In 1947, Johnson took Frank Lucas to Havana for a meeting with Lucky Luciano. The year before, Luciano had arrived in Cuba for the Havana Conference, hoping to use it as a vehicle to regain control of La Cosa Nostra. At the meeting, Luciano ordered the killing of Bugsy Siegel, who had screwed up in Las Vegas by opening casinos for the mob that lost a lot of money. Like many of Harlem's leading black gangsters, Bumpy migrated to the neighborhood from the South. He was born Ellsworth Raymond Johnson on October 16, 1906, in Charleston, South Carolina's Black Ghetto. Reports provide conflicting details of his early life in Charleston. It's unclear, for instance, how he got the nickname Bumpy. The most commonly accepted explanation is that it came from a permanent bump he got on the back of his head at an early age. But other explanations include getting the nickname for bumping people off and bumping people around in basketball.
Enjoying this shit so far? Then hit that thumbs up button.
For more of these fascinating stories and true crimes, subscribe to Charles Arnis World. Thanks for watching.
Looking for a professional photographer for your next big event? Need video of your special day? Then look no further. For $100 an hour, have a professional photographer or videographer shoot your wedding, birthday party, quinceañera, bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, anniversary party, or whatever your special occasion may be. Highlight your event with professional, crisp photos and video. Check out Charles Arnis Photography on Instagram, as well as book us for your next event. Must live in the Southern California area.